Let's talk about what we're working on together. That is the United States and Canada. What's at the top of the list? Climate is something that comes up quite a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, both of our governments are deeply committed to moving forward in fighting climate change, and in fact are integrating that objective in our COVID economic recovery, so that as we invest money in our economies and in our businesses to move forward on infrastructure and transportation, that we're doing so in a way that accelerates our efforts to fight climate change, and frankly going to make us more competitive worldwide in some of these new and innovative technologies that the whole world is going to want to have.
I read that your Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau, had a big victory, actually, in the courts with his carbon tax. As he talks to President Biden, what are the things specifically that we can do to make sure together the two countries can really reduce greenhouse gases?
Right. So, there's a lot of ways in which our economies are deeply integrated. A good example is the transportation and automotive sector. We build a lot of vehicles together. And there is a strong commitment here in the United States, but also in Canada, to move towards electrification of our transportation system, vehicles and trucks and buses and everything. And I think that is a very good example of the way we can amplify each other's efforts, not only from a manufacturing perspective, but from a development of technology perspective, from an innovation perspective. We can make each other stronger. The Prime Minister and the President, in fact, committed just last month to trying to make Canada and the US the powerhouse for battery technology, because we have everything from the minerals that are required for that technology up to the know-how and the innovation, and of course the manufacturing capacity for it. So I think that really what we can see is two countries working together to fight climate change in a way that positions us very well economically as well.
Ambassador Hillman, I know also that President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau have discussed that situation with two Canadian citizens being held in jail over in China. As I understand, they were convicted after just an hour. They've been held for a good long time. What can the United States do to help you with that situation?
Well, I think the United States and other allies, it's essential that we all stand together and we make it clear that this kind of hostage diplomacy, so those two individuals are in jail because Canada is respecting our international treaty obligations that we have to the United States. And this is obviously a huge tragedy for those two individuals, but as a group of nations that respect the rule of law and that respect human rights, it is essential that we all stand together to push back on these kinds of behaviors. So specifically, the U.S. has said to us, and this is a very powerful thing, that they will work with us to secure the release of those two individuals as though they were American citizens. And so, we are exerting as much pressure as we can on China and working all the angles.
I wonder, is the best way to achieve the goal to de-link the two questions? That is to say, the Chinese executive who's being held for possible extradition to the United States up in Canada, de-link that from the two individuals who are Canadians over there, or actually to link them up and really resolve the whole thing as one big issue?
As I say, I think all options have to be explored. There is, for sure, there is a judicial process, and Canada is respecting the rule of law, as is the United States, with respect to the individual who is in custody in Canada. She is going through the Canadian judicial process, and that is, at the behest of the U.S. for the charges that she is facing here in the United States. So that judicial process has to run its course or has to follow the rules of law. And at the same time, there is this, as I say, hostage diplomacy with the Canadians who have been held as a consequence of that. So there are many different ways to come at this, and I think we are eager to work on all of them together with the U.S.
Madam Ambassador, the elephant in the corner all around the world is actually the pandemic and COVID-19. Take us through U.S.-Canadian relations when it comes to COVID-19. Where are we cooperating? Where can we cooperate? By the way, can we reopen the border at some point?
Right. So really, there are a multitude of ways in which we're coordinating. We are coordinating to fight the pandemic, on research and development and vaccination of our populations, on securing PPEs between our two countries, on turning both of us towards the world to make sure that we are responsible in helping other countries fight and get the pandemic under control, because it is, as we all know, a global phenomenon. And in addition to that, working towards finding ourselves in a situation, both countries, where we have the pandemic sufficiently under control that we can move towards robust economic recovery and move towards, as you say, having our citizens move back and forth across the border freely. That is going to be essential to a full economic recovery. So we need to be working on both at the same time, and we are.
What about on vaccines? Everyone needs more vaccine, no question about it. I did read the United States was offering to lend some AstraZeneca vaccine to Canada as well as to Mexico. Where are you? Where is Canada right now with vaccine? What do you need?
So we have a very diverse and broad portfolio of vaccines, and we are securing those supplies through those providers, those companies from all over the world. We're very grateful for the 1.5 million doses that the U.S. is forwarding to us that should be delivered before the end of the month. That is going to help, and ultimately, frankly, we need to see our two countries come to a place where we are both sufficiently vaccinated and we are both sufficiently confident with our ability to control the virus in our two countries before we can really move to reestablish all of the ties that Canadians and Americans rely on so deeply. So vaccines are a huge component of that, and also, of course, domestic mitigation and management as well.
Do you have any sense, Madam Ambassador, I realize you're not an epidemiologist, any sense of what the hallmark would be when we're to that point that we can reopen it? Is it a matter of the number of cases coming up? Is it a matter of what percentage of the population is vaccinated? What are you looking at?
Well, so we're taking our advice from the scientists and the experts on this. Given that this pandemic is not like anything certainly our generation has ever seen before, there's a constant reevaluation of what's happening. We now have variants that we're having to deal with at the same time as we are moving forward to vaccinating our populations, which is giving us a lot of optimism and hope. But truly, the facts on the ground are going to dictate when we are able to move towards a reopening for non-essential travel. I would say, and I do think it's really important to point this out, throughout this past year, over a year, we have kept the US-Canada border open for trade, right? And open for essential travel, business travel, compassionate travel. So it's not as though we are not still interacting with each other from a business perspective. Obviously, there's a lot more that Canadians and Americans want to be able to do together, but we are achieving our goal of trying to sustain our economic relationship in as robust a way as we can, while obviously prioritizing the health and safety of Canadians and of course, here in the U.S. of America.
Yeah, just quickly, Madam Ambassador, and finally, everybody's trade dipped because of the pandemic. Are you seeing it start to come back up again between the United States and Canada?
Yeah, our trade is quite solid. In fact, when we look at, for example, on the border between Canada and the U.S., when we look at the commercial releases on a month-by-month basis, there has been a small dip, but really not a significant dip as compared to last year. So sometimes it's 2 or 3%, sometimes it's on par, sometimes depending on the months, it's actually been over. So I look to that as a very positive thing.